The tale begins on the dark streets of Paris, where a man climbs out of a manhole in the middle of the night, desperately searching for a taxi. He rushes toward an empty cab, unaware that something beneath the surface has taken notice of his movements. Although the taxi driver tries to assist when the man is suddenly dragged down, he quickly backs off after realizing that an unseen force is pulling him underground. Next, we're introduced to a group of American tourists, Andy, Brad, and Chris, on an adventurous journey across Europe. The trio thrives on thrill-seeking and rewards each other with points for every extreme challenge they conquer. When a French woman passes by, Chris dares Andy to get her number. Andy declines, saying she's not his type. This prompts laughter from his friends, who tease him for not having made any romantic moves during the trip. Wanting to change the topic, Andy declares that he'll attempt a stunt so daring, it will leave the others envious. In Paris, they head straight to the summit of the Eiffel Tower. There, Andy begins jotting down calculations in a small notebook. As he pulls a long rope from his bag, his friends grow uneasy. Brad even apologizes for mocking him earlier on the train, insisting there's no need to prove anything. Suddenly, they hear someone approaching the restricted area and hurriedly hide. A beautiful young woman appears, slipping a note into her cleavage as she tears up, clearly preparing to jump. Andy steps out of hiding in an attempt to talk her out of it, but she jumps anyway. Without hesitation, he leaps after her, relying on the rope he had already secured to his leg. His friends grab the other end as Andy manages to grasp the girl's foot. Though he's left holding only her shoe, they're close enough to the ground that she isn't harmed. On the way back up, however, Andy hits his head on a metal beam and wakes up in the hospital the following day. Brad holds onto the girl's shoe, and Andy asks his friends to help find the note to learn more about her. This leads to several humorous misunderstandings with the locals, some of whom are offended by the tourists' behavior, except for one woman who mistakes them for panhandlers and tosses them a coin. Back at the hospital, Andy is stunned when he spots the girl walking down the hallway dressed as a nurse. He chases after her and even manages to get a smile by offering to return her shoe. Just then, a clumsy doctor swings a door open, knocking Andy, still injured, to the floor. As the girl runs off again, the doctor also asks about her, claiming she stole his heart. Misunderstanding the literal meaning, Andy replies that he knows the feeling. Soon after, Andy's friends arrive with good news. They found the note and discovered that the girl's name is Serafini Piggott. Once Andy recovers, he gathers the courage to visit her home and ring the bell. She still wears her nurse disguise when she answers, and Andy notices bloodstains on her fingers. She thanks him for returning the shoe, quickly shuts the door, and urges him not to linger. Although Chris and Brad are ready to move on, Andy grows concerned for her well-being and rings the bell repeatedly like a madman. Finally, Serafini opens the door, pleading with him to leave, but agrees to meet the next day. At the appointed time, she arrives on a bicycle while the guys are still fixing their hair and offering last-minute advice. They head to a cafe, but things begin to unravel as Andy's awkwardness starts to show. Serafini suspects he might have unrealistic expectations for the date. When her patience wears thin, Andy opens up, admitting he's nervous because he genuinely likes her. He also expresses his concern for her safety and says he can't forget the sadness he saw in her eyes that night. This moment seems to soften her, and she admits that she was touched by his bravery in jumping to save her. However, she soon reverts to a cryptic tone, saying no one can truly help her. At that moment, a fellow patron at the cafe starts provoking Andy and confronts his poorly hidden friends at a nearby table. Serafini warns the man to stop, but when he headbutts Andy, she's forced to intervene. With unexpected strength, she shoves the man across the room, startling everyone present. Realizing she revealed more than intended, Serafini panics and bolts out of the cafe. Andy chases after her, fascinated by her feat. They nearly kiss, but she pulls away, urging him not to pursue her and insisting it's for his own good. Andy is left heartbroken. His friends think it's just a tactic to pique his interest, but he remains concerned about her mental state. Serafini had revealed that she was an orphan and hinted at blaming herself for her parents' deaths. Determined to find answers, the trio returns to her house. This time, a man named Claude answers the door. He claims Serafini isn't home but says he adores Americans and invites them in. Andy declines and asks about Claude's relationship with her, to which Claude vaguely responds that he looks after her. Before they leave, he hands them a flyer for a party at Club de Lune, assuring them that Serafini will be there. Temptation gets the better of Andy, and he persuades his friends to go to the nightclub. Despite letting in all sorts of shady people, the bouncer refuses them entry when he realizes they're Americans, until Andy mentions that they were invited by Claude inside the club. The vibe is unsettling, there are barely any women around, and Seraphine is nowhere to be seen. Chris offers to return to her house and check again, leaving Andy to wait at the party with Brad. When he knocks, no one answers, but a light flickering from another part of the house grabs his attention. Acting on instinct, Chris investigates and is stunned to find Seraphine trapped in a cage. He shatters the window to get inside the basement and attempts to rescue her. Despite being confined, she insists she doesn't need help and urges him to leave until Chris mentions Andy is at the party. Upon seeing the club flyer Claude gave him, her attitude shifts. Seraphine urgently tells Chris to grab the cage key hanging on the wall, warning that Andy is in grave danger. Chris refuses to stay out of it, prompting Seraphine to knock him out cold with a single punch. Moments later, Chris wakes up inside the cage, realizing the key has been rehung on the wall, well beyond his reach. The basement appears deserted, apart from a curtained area behind which strange medical sounds echo. He begins shouting for help, but his cries go unanswered. Meanwhile, Seraphine arrives at the club, and the doorman, visibly uneasy, allows her inside, even though Claude hasn't given permission. She quickly finds Andy and tells him they need to leave immediately. A man named Jacques blocks their way, but Seraphine declares Andy is with her and guides him into a tunnel corridor. Claude scolds Jack for letting them go and pursues them, unaware that Brad is trailing behind. Back in the cage, Chris puts his ingenuity to work, fashioning a makeshift treadmill from his clothes. He manages to knock the key onto the cloth using his shoe and begins reeling it in. Meanwhile, Seraphine and Andy keep running until they reach a wall with an ominous opening. Seraphine insists Andy must go through it alone. As they say goodbye, Andy steals a kiss only to feel her claw-like nails scrape his back. Panicking, she shoves him toward the hole, screaming for him to leave. Still believing Claude poses the biggest threat, Andy hesitates. Even as her voice morphs, he doesn't flee until she starts pelting him with bricks. Back at the club, Claude's group is also undergoing disturbing physical changes, becoming more beastly. As moonlight hits Seraphine's face, the shocking truth is revealed: she and her friends are all werewolves. After her transformation, she climbs through the same hole, just missing Brad, who arrives seconds later searching for Andy. Chaos erupts inside the club as the werewolves begin slaughtering the partygoers, who, like the Americans, have fallen into a deadly trap. The terrified crowd rushes to the exit, only to find it locked from the outside, the fake emergency sign removed. Chris, now free, hears agonizing groans beyond the curtain and investigates. Behind it, he finds a horrifying werewolf without legs lying on a hospital stretcher, still trying to lunge at him. The beast is so powerful it drags the bed in medical gear as it charges. Chris uses a spoon to unlock a nearby door, only to find a cupboard. With the creature almost upon him, he leaps over the overturned bed and escapes through a window. In the tunnels, Brad encounters two glowing lights that arouse his curiosity, only to realize, too late, that they belong to a werewolf. He doesn't survive the encounter, and his body is swept away by the current. Andy also runs into the beast and flees in terror, managing to shut a gate just in time. But the creature crashes through it effortlessly, and though Andy uses a metal bar to slow it down, the werewolf still bites his leg during the chase. The next morning, Andy wakes up in Seraphine's home, his senses unnaturally heightened. Chris is nearby, hiding in the yard and watching through the window as Seraphine blends what look like human organs in a blender. Chris throws pebbles at the window to get Andy's attention and warn him, but Seraphine enters the room with a drink before they can speak. She explains that Andy was bitten by a werewolf and is now turning into one himself. He laughs it off until intense hallucinations begin. She assures him it's a normal part of the transition. Things take a dark turn when her mother appears, and Andy realizes she's a corpse. Terrified, he jumps out the window and runs, unaware of his enhanced physical abilities. He doesn't hear Chris calling him. Chris has been captured by Claude. Later, Andy returns to the club's location, which is now crawling with police. He's devastated when he recognizes Brad's lifeless body being pulled from the river. At the station, Inspector Luke tells him all the bodies are missing their hearts, but no one takes Andy's testimony seriously. While trying to process everything, Andy also starts grappling with his physical changes and a rising, primal hunger, especially for female company. That instinct kicks in when he meets another American tourist, Amy Finch, who agrees to have dinner with him. However, she notices his odd behavior at the table. Andy remains in denial even after Brad's ghost suddenly appears. The encounter causes a scene. Fleeing to the bathroom, he talks with the apparition, who confirms Seraphine's story and reveals he's now a zombie, his soul stuck on Earth until the werewolf that killed him dies. But Brad urges him to ditch Amy and lock himself away before moonrise. Despite everything that's happened, Andy stubbornly chooses to ignore the danger and takes Amy for a walk through the cemetery. The mood between them starts to intensify. Unbeknownst to them, the detective continues to track Andy, sneaking among the tombstones with his little dog. Suddenly, Andy begins to feel the moon's pull and, panicked, abandons Amy on top of a tombstone, rushing off to dive into a fountain and cool his body down. Feeling insulted, Amy starts looking for him. That's when Andy emerges from the water in full werewolf form. Poised to attack her, Amy bolts through the graveyard, trying to lose him with perfume, and hides inside a sealed mausoleum. However, she mistakes the dog's shadow for safety and exits her hiding spot at the worst possible moment. Andy attacks her and also devours the detective. His dog doesn't survive either. Andy regains consciousness amid flashing cameras and chaos, just as he's taken into custody by Inspector Luke. The inspector admits to hiring the detective to keep tabs on him and reveals the condition of the previous night's victims. Once left alone in the morgue, Amy suddenly opens her eyes and furiously curses at Andy. Brad also appears, and the two engage in a heated argument. As the delegate mocks Luke's bizarre theories, she orders Andy's immediate arrest, but by then, he's already made his escape. When Luke returns, he finds himself on the street with both Brad and Amy, who finally manage to convince him of the unbelievable truth. Brad then explains that the only way to reverse the curse is by consuming the heart of the werewolf who infected him. Andy realizes that must have been Serafini. Just then, Claude's gang ambushes him and drags him into an old church. Deep in the catacombs, Claude explains that his pack consists of elite werewolves, selected to form a dominant breed. Andy's transformation was accidental, but he can still join if he proves himself. Claude presents him with a choice: kill his friend Chris, who is locked in a cell, and rip out his heart. Andy refuses, even after being told the price will be his own life. Instead, he lashes out at Claude, relying on his enhanced reflexes to escape. But he's surrounded, all of them are werewolves. Just when he seems outmatched, Serafini bursts through a door behind him, and together they flee. As they run, Serafini pours gasoline behind them, lighting it with a torch. As they escape through a hidden tunnel, they emerge in the basement of her home, where Serafini reveals what's behind the curtain. Terry, her stepfather, a scientist who once came close to discovering a cure. But the first trial went wrong. Serafini turned into a werewolf, attacked her mother, and then Terry, who couldn't escape through the sewer system. Racked with guilt, she climbed the tower, ready to end her life, until she encountered Andy. The gang arrives to check if they're hiding there. Andy escapes upstairs, while Serafini holds Claude off. Soon, the rest follow. Making things worse, Amy returns, still bitter, and even tries to help the werewolves by revealing Andy's location. Fortunately, her body is deteriorating and she fails to even whistle. The pack only spots Andy after he steals a car, which he crashes almost immediately, triggering a chain reaction of wrecks and furious drivers. Now being pursued by two groups, Andy hops onto the back of a bus to return to the basement. There, he finds Serafini grieving, trying desperately to revive Terry, whose lab has been destroyed. Worse, the werewolves stole the instant transformation serum, leaving only a flyer for their next gathering. Aware it's a trap, Andy sneaks into the party and cuts the music, warning everyone of the impending danger. The crowd laughs, and Luke arrests him again. He's also at the event. Meanwhile, Serafini watches from outside as the bouncer seals the exits. The police realize they're locked in just as the macabre show begins. Claude and his crew take the stage disguised as monks and reveal a crucifix with Chris strapped to it. In desperation, Andy grabs an officer's gun and fires at the gang but is subdued. Luke orders their arrest, but the fake monks inject themselves with the serum. The transformation is violent, and the werewolves break free, attacking everyone without mercy. Chris falls as the crucifix collapses in the chaos, and Serafini bursts through the door with a bulldozer. Backup patrols arrive alongside the delegate, who's frustrated by what she considers superstition. She commands her officers to move in. Amid the madness, Chris runs for his life while still tied to the cross. Andy seizes another weapon and shoots a werewolf, warning Serafini that Claude is trying to flee. Others are taken down, and one of them, the one who killed Brad, finally breaks free of his bindings. Andy and Serafini flee into the catacombs, splitting up. Luke encounters a werewolf and flees, falling through a secret opening. The delegate isn't so lucky. She and her assistant are eaten. Their dying screams alert Serafini, who tries to shoot a werewolf but realizes she's out of ammo. She escapes and stumbles upon a fallen monk carrying a remaining syringe. With no alternative, she injects herself, transforms, and fights the beast on equal footing. When Andy arrives and sees the two battling, unaware that one is Serafini, he shoots. The other werewolf dies, but Serafini reverts to her human form, leaving Andy devastated by his mistake. Accepting her fate, she asks him to end her suffering, reminding him that consuming her heart will finally set her free. But before he can decide, the police arrive and take over. Only Claude remains to be dealt with. While searching for him, Andy slips onto the subway tracks just as a train approaches. Claude charges at him, and at the last second, Andy leaps aside. The train strikes the werewolf. Passengers panic, and the conductor peers onto the tracks only to be attacked moments later. Claude storms the next car, sending everyone into a frenzy, until the drug wears off. Back in human form, Claude prepares another dose, but Andy crashes through the window and knocks it away with a flying kick. They engage in a brutal fight, and Andy notices a bite mark on Claude's shoulder, the same one he inflicted. Realizing Serafini wasn't the one who turned him, Andy is enraged. Claude tries to retrieve the syringe, accidentally stabbing Andy in the process. Attempting to flee, he's stopped when Andy transforms and overpowers him, ripping out his heart. Months pass. Andy and Serafini are now engaged. During the ceremony, Chris accidentally drops the ring. The couple dives to retrieve it, and we see them soaring above the Statue of Liberty, with Andy slipping the ring onto Serafini's finger midair.